The rain poured down outside the old cafe on the corner of Maple Street. It was just another gray afternoon, one where everything felt heavy. Inside, Jenna sat at a small table, nervously stirring her coffee. The place smelled like burnt toast and wet pavement. She kept glancing toward the door, her heart racing with each chime of the little bell above it. Then she saw him, Sam, standing in the doorway, drenched and lost. His dark hair stuck to his forehead and his eyes darted across the room, scanning for her. When their eyes met, she felt a rush of relief mixed with anxiety. Jenna quickly motioned him over, her heart pounding. She whispered, forcing a smile, hoping to mask her concern. Sam approached, sliding into the seat across from her. He was clearly out of breath, his gaze darting towards the door again. He whispered, his voice low and shaky. Jenna shook her head, trying to keep the fear off her face. "No, but we have to be quick." While they spoke, Jenna's mind raced. This wasn't just a casual coffee date. No, this was an emergency. With everything happening around them, they needed to leave unnoticed. She pointed toward the back exit of the cafe, hoping it would be their escape route. "Let's go through there." Sam nodded, eyes wide, but just as they were about to move, Jenna's phone buzzed in her pocket. Her stomach dropped. She fished it out, her fingers trembling as she saw his name pop up on the screen. Sam urged, his voice turning urgent. "I know," she murmured, her heart sinking. The music in the cafe blurred into white noise as she tapped the screen. He urged. Reluctantly, she pressed the green button, bringing the phone to her ear. She said, her voice barely above a whisper. The voice on the other end asked, calm but cold. Jenna felt a shiver run down her spine. "Yes," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Don't stay where you are," he instructed, a steel edge to his tone. Jenna swallowed hard, fear clawing inside her. "Just wait, trust me," he said. Without letting her respond, he hung up. Staring blankly at the screen, Jenna's mind flooded with confusion. She looked at Sam, whose anxiety was blooming now into a full-blown panic. He demanded, his voice rising. "He said to stay," she replied. The words felt stuck in her throat, like they were hard to say. "Why would he say that?" Sam coldly whispered, glancing toward the door again. She sank deeper into her seat, glancing around the cafe. "Or maybe he's playing you," Sam hissed, his eyes narrowing. The tension between them thickened like smoke, filling every empty space in the small booth. Jenna felt torn, her gut telling her to trust her instincts, yet the safety of Sam was all she could think of. As if sensing her conflict, Sam leaned closer, his voice low and desperate. "You can't trust him." Just then, another buzzing sound pulled her from her thoughts. It was the phone again, vibrating like an anxious heart in her hand. She took a deep breath, bracing herself. She asked. Sam snapped, frustration evident in his tone. She opened the call, her heart racing. "Listen carefully," the voice said, the urgency palpable. "I'm near." Panic surged inside her. "Now," he urged, and the call ended once more. Jenna's breath came in quick bursts, the fear thickening in her throat. Her eyes met Sam's, and she could see the confusion turning into something darker distrust. Jenna felt her chest tight. Sam's voice rose sharply, drawing stares from nearby tables. "I need a plan," she urged, panic cracking her voice. "Everyone's watching," Sam said, looking around, the tension palpable. She took in the wary faces in the cafe, eyes flicking toward them, murmurs rising in the air. She said, trembling. Then Jenna's heart dropped as she saw the door swing open. A tall figure stepped inside, soaking wet with an unmistakable determination in their stride. She hissed, pushing Sam out of sight behind the table. They crouched together, hearts pounding, as the figure scanned the room, searching. "This is it," Jenna whispered, grasping Sam's hand, squeezing it tightly. He returned the grip, eyes wide, but something in his expression shifted. Resolve, fear, it was hard to tell. Sam murmured, voice steadying as he breathed in and out. Jenna felt a knot tighten in her gut. What if he was? She gazed at Sam, conflicted but knowing they were in this corner together. "I won't let them take you, Jenna," he said softly, determination shining through even as fear lingered. The figure continued to survey the cafe, and her heart raced at every second of silence. She watched from her crouched position, trying to catch a glimpse of their features, but the rain-soaked hood and shadowed face kept her from seeing clear. Then the figure seemed to lock onto their spot, eyes narrowing as if sensing their presence, and Jenna's breath caught in her throat. "Stay down," Sam whispered, placing himself between her and the figure. In that moment, everything seemed to blur: the sound, the smoke from the cafe's kitchen, and even the thoughts in her head. The world around them felt as if it was closing in, narrowing just to this moment of fear and uncertainty. "Let's make a break for it," Sam barely breathed, easing his way up slightly. Barely daring to look around, before she could respond, Jenna's phone buzzed again, startling them both. The tension hung thick in the air. They exchanged glances, hearts racing. "I'll answer it," Sam murmured, reaching for her phone. Jenna pulled it back, her voice urgent. Sam insisted. With a deep breath, Jenna handed him the phone, uncertainty flashing in her eyes. Sam pressed the button, bringing the phone to his ear. Sam demanded, anger spilling over. The voice asked, calm yet persistent, cutting through the tension. "Yes," he snapped, keeping his eyes trained on the door. "Listen closely," the voice said. "You need to leave." Despite the chaos around them, Jenna's heart skipped a beat at the seriousness in the voice. Sam glanced at her, confusion etching his features. "You don't understand. They're coming for both of you," the voice warned, urgency escalating. "Run." Sam's grip tightened around the phone, his eyes darting back to the mysterious figure still lurking in the cafe. "I can't just leave her," he said, glancing back at Jenna. "Jenna's your priority." The voice cut through, its calm becoming sharp. Jenna pleaded softly, her heart racing louder with each passing second. Silence followed her question, stretching painfully long. Just then the figure took a step forward. Sam finally muttered, his voice shaking. He threw the phone back into Jenna's trembling hands just as the figure spotted them, eyes cutting through the crowd directly at their hiding place. Without another word, Jenna grabbed Sam's hand, adrenaline flooding her system as they shot toward the back exit. They stumbled out into the alley, the cold night air hitting their faces like a slap. Behind them, the cafe's door swung open, and they could hear muffled voices yelling, but it was too late. They were outside, soaked from the rain, hearts racing as they sprinted into the unknown night. Sam shouted over the sound of the rain pounding against the pavement. Jenna gasped, pushing forward, hoping they could stay ahead. They darted into the darkness, the streets ahead looming like a hidden maze. With every step, Jenna felt both fear and determination rising. The rain poured around them, splashing against their legs as they moved, hearts pounding in sync through the chaos. And somewhere in the shadows, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were still being watched, still being hunted. But for now, they were alive, fueled by a single instinct, survival. As they raced into the night, Jenna held tight to the hope of what lay ahead, even as uncertainty stretched out before them like an endless road. She had to believe somehow they would find safety. But the echoes of her phone ringing in her pocket reminded her that this story wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. A cafe door burst open and the wind howled in, carrying with it the scent of rain-soaked streets. Jenna's heart raced as her gaze darted toward the entrance, expecting to see him, Sam. She hadn't heard from him for days, and now in this moment of chaos, she sensed he was close. Everything felt charged, like the air before a storm. Just then, he stumbled through the door, eyes wild and breathless. His shirt was drenched, clinging to him like a second skin. He gasped, scanning the room, searching for trouble. It was clear he was on high alert, and she could feel her own body tightening with anxiety. She whispered urgently, waving him over. He quickly approached, glancing over his shoulder. "They're on to me," he said, his voice a low tremor. Jenna's heart sank. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," he admitted, biting his lip, and Jenna could tell he was wrestling with fear. Sam's eyes were wide, filled with the kind of panic that makes you want to cry out. "We have to get out of here," he insisted. They couldn't stay in plain sight, not with the stakes so high. She motioned toward the back exit, a small door leading to a shadowy alley. "That way." He nodded, but before they could move, Jenna's phone buzzed violently in her pocket. Her breath caught as she reached for it, the screen lighting up with an unknown number. The world around her seemed to freeze. Sam urged, his eyes darting back to the entrance, but her instincts pushed her to heed it. She murmured as she pulled it out, her fingers shaking. Sam's urgency fought against her curiosity like a storm. With a shaky finger, she pressed the green button. She said, keeping her voice low. It was him, the voice she recognized all too well, a cold steadiness splashing over her like icy water. "Yes, he's right here," she whispered, glancing at Sam, who looked ready to bolt. "Listen carefully," he instructed, his tone sharp. "Stay, but we can't," she began to protest, glancing toward Sam, whose face was turning pale with uncertainty. "Jenna, trust me, you're in danger," his voice grew more urgent. "They're close, don't leave yet." A loud crash outside echoed through the cafe, and Jenna felt her pulse quicken. She said, panic creeping into her voice. "Just hang tight, I'll call you back," he said, and just like that, the line went dead. Her heart sank. Sam looked at her, confusion written across his face. "He told me to stay," she replied, her voice trembling. "Stay," Sam seethed, glancing toward the busy main street visible through the cafe window. Jenna could feel the weight of reality pressing down on her. What if he was right? What if this was a trap, but something deep inside told her to trust him, even as her instincts screamed to get out? "He knows something we don't," she whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Or he's playing you," Sam said, the frustration boiling over in his voice. The tension surged between them, thick and pulsing, as the door swung open again, sending icy shivers down Jenna's spine. Another figure stepped in, silhouetted against the glimmering light outside. The unmistakable essence of danger hung heavy in the room, rising to meet them like a feverish nightmare. Jenna held her breath, pressing against the table as the new arrival scanned the cafe. Sam hissed, pushing Jenna behind a rusting table. They crouched there, hearts racing, trying to keep their breaths low, their bodies tense like springs. Jenna could hardly focus on anything except for the shadow moving closer. The figure's eyes roamed deliberately, locking onto their booth as if they could sense the adrenaline clenching their bodies. She whispered, fear creeping into her voice, and that's when her phone buzzed again. Sam asked, his voice coated in anxiety. "I have to check," she said, feeling trapped. She pulled it out, anxiously answering the call. "Jenna, listen closely," he began, the urgency sharper this time. "You need to leave now, I mean it." Jenna's heart dropped and a cold chill washed over her. "Doesn't matter," he said briskly. "Just go, he's coming for you both." Before she could respond, a crash erupted from the main area of the cafe, followed by shouts. Jenna's blood ran cold as she grabbed Sam's arm, her voice suddenly fierce. Sam protested, but the terror in his gaze was evident. She insisted, pulling him to his feet. As they surged through the narrow space between tables, Jenna felt the weight of their choices crashing down around them, every heartbeat pounding with the urgency of their escape. They reached the back door and she pushed it open, the chill of the night air hitting them like a slap. The alley was dark, puddles shimmering under the occasional flicker of a streetlight. Without thinking, she dashed into the shadows, pulling Sam behind her. Once in the alley, Jenna felt the sense of danger shift. But her mind raced with panic. Where to go now? We can't just stand here, she said. Sam snapped, his anxiety morphing into anger, and she could feel the tension spilling over. Jenna replied, trying to steady her thoughts. She leaned against the cold brick wall, gasping for air, reality crashing around her like glass. His voice softened, a sense of desperation creeping in. Just as he spoke, her phone buzzed again, this time vibrating like a heartbeat. She pulled it out, the name lighting up the screen again. She exclaimed, heart thrumming. Sam urged, his voice cracking. With shaking hands, she pressed the button and lifted the phone to her ear. She asked, barely containing her fear, head toward the park, I'll meet you there, the voice instructed. She replied, straining to hear over the distant sound of sirens, stay alert. Don't trust anyone, the line went dead, leaving her breathless. She exclaimed, the anxiety flooding her again. Sam demanded, his impatience boiling over. He wants us to go to the park, Jenna said, trying to control the fear bubbling within her. Sam pushed a hand through his drenched hair, frustration radiating off him. What if it's a trap? Her conviction hardened. Fine, he said, but Jenna could see the doubt flickering in his eyes. They took off down the alley, peripheral sounds faded into the background as the adrenaline coursed through them. The urban landscape morphed around them, shadows stretching and flickering like dark ghosts. Every footstep felt heavier, every corner tense with the possibility of being caught. Jenna tried to organize her thoughts to calm the storm raging inside her mind. Just keep moving, she told herself. Stay focused, stay together. The park's entrance loomed ahead, its gates ajar and welcoming, yet the space beyond felt haunting and alive with unseen movements. Shadows danced under the moonlight, and Jenna had to blink out the fear that threatened to consume her. Sam shouted, panting behind her. Jenna spun around, ready to face whatever lurked in the darkness, but it was only him, his face pale, eyes wild. He gasped, desperation mixing with fear. Then we keep running, keep fighting, she said, determination washing over her. As the moonlight broke through the clouds, illuminating a narrow path leading to the center of the park, they pressed forward. There was a sense of urgency, but also of liberation, as if leaving behind the chains of doubt and fear. Sam muttered, scanning the trees for movement. The wind rustled the leaves ominously, and whispers filled the air with tension. I don't know, Jenna admitted, glancing over her shoulder, the darkness feeling denser. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again, echoing in the stillness. Sam grabbed it, pressing it to his ear before she could react. He barked. The voice crackled, a beat of urgency now seeping through. Sam replied, glancing wildly around. Good, stay close. The line went dead again. Jenna whispered, her voice trembling. We wait, I guess, Sam murmured, though doubt hung over his words. Just stick together, Jenna said, the weight of uncertainty threatening to consume her. Minutes felt like hours as they stood in that eerie park, hearts racing, eyes darting. The shadows felt alive, creeping closer, whispering their fears into the night. And then, without warning, lights flashed at the park's edge, followed by the thunder of footsteps. Jenna hissed, adrenaline rushing. Sam shouted, pulling her along as they darted toward a nearby grove for cover. The distant voices grew louder, approaching rapidly. There'd be no time to hide. Dead frustration lacing his words, panic bubbling just beneath the surface. Jenna felt her chest tight. We can't give up, she urged, knowing their survival depended on their resolve. As the figures drew closer, their silhouettes stark against the park's dim light, Jenna's breath caught. Just then, another voice cut through the darkness, sharper and more commanding than the rest. Terror gripped her as she recognized it. She whispered urgently. Sam hissed again, fear rising, the air growing thick with tension. But she couldn't ignore it. Summoning a deep rush of energy, she pushed past Sam, standing tall against everything that threatened them. She shouted, rejecting her fear. Figures emerged from the shadows, some familiar, others unknown. Tension hung heavy, but Jenna felt an odd calm wash over her. She could feel it, her resolve wouldn't buckle. And in that moment, the fear of the unknown shifted into something else, something powerful and transformative. She wasn't just surviving, she was taking control. Stay close, Sam, she said, trembling but firm as she stepped forward, heart racing but mind focused, knowing this was just the beginning of a fight she'd refused to lose. The door swung open so hard it rattled the small bell above it, and Jenna's heart raced as she turned, her breath hitching in her throat. He was supposed to be here any minute. Instead, the figure glowing in the doorway wasn't the familiar face she craved. It was a stranger, eyes hidden beneath a hood, a shadow that sent chills down her spine. She thought, scanning the cafe frantically. The air was thick with the scent of burnt coffee and the distant hum of chatter, but none of it mattered. Somewhere the clock was ticking. Then, like a ripple across calm water, the door opened again, and there he was, Sam. He rushed in, panting, drenched from the rain, his shirt clinging to him as if it were terrified he'd slip away. His eyes darted around the crowded cafe, searching for her. Jenna called, waving her arms, her heart finally easing slightly. Relief flooded her as he made his way over, but the urgency in his expression cut through the moment. "We need to go," he said, breathless. Her stomach twisted. She asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I don't know, but I think they followed me," he replied, his voice low, strained. He glanced at the cafe's door, his breath coming in quick bursts. Without replying, Jenna motioned towards the back exit, an unmarked door that led to a narrow alley. As they started to get up, Jenna's phone buzzed violently in her pocket. Her heart dropped into her stomach. Sam urged, panic rushing back into his eyes, but she couldn't ignore it. It felt like the world was closing in, and maybe this was a lifeline. She whispered, her fingers already fumbling with the screen. His voice was desperate. With a shaky breath, she answered, pressing the phone to her ear. "Jenna, it's me," the voice came through, so familiar yet shrouded in urgency. A chill grazed her skin. "Yes," she breathed, glancing at him, his anxious fidgeting confirming that there was no turning back now. "Stay where you are," he instructed, his voice steady but urgent. "Don't go out, they're close." Sam repeated, crossing his arms, a frown etching deeper into his brow. She said, her voice barely above a whisper as the weight of the situation pressed heavily on her. Outside, thunder grumbled ominously, echoing their escalating tension. Sam hissed, glancing toward the door again. "Maybe," she said, her heart pounding against her ribcage. Sam shot back, fear morphing into frustration. Just as the words hung heavily in the air, the cafe door swung open again, revealing a tall figure cloaked in shadows. Jenna felt her pulse quicken as the stranger stepped inside, scanning the room like they were hunting. Sam whispered sharply, his posture stiffening. They slipped behind the small table, crouching low, trying to minimize their presence. Jenna's heart raced louder than ever, a drum echoing in her ears. It felt as though the world fell silent, every eye in the cafe suddenly focused on them. She whispered, her voice trembling. Just then her phone buzzed again, deathly quiet in the midst of everything. Sam hissed, his voice thick with worry. She refused to let fear cage her. She pressed the button, lifting the phone to her ear. The voice asked, calm yet tinged with urgency. "Yes," Jenna responded, glancing at Sam, whose expression was a mix of worry and anger. "Good, I need you to run," she demanded. "Just go." The call ended abruptly, leaving her heart hammering in her chest. Sam pressed, his tone sharp, uncertainty gnawing at their options. "He told me to run," she replied, feeling the knot of fear grow tighter. He urged, leaning forward on the balls of his feet, ready to erupt into action. She stammered, eyes flickering to the stranger who stood near the entrance, their heads slowly turning in their direction. Sam said, the urgency in his voice propelling her. Without thinking, Jenna grabbed Sam's hand, her pulse pounding in rhythm with their frantic hearts as they burst through the back door toward the alley, the cool night air hitting them like a wave. Making their escape felt electric, but the uncertainty of where to go gnawed at her. Sam panted, twisting to glance back at the cafe. "We have to keep moving," Jenna said, adrenaline overriding her fear. They dashed into the dimly lit alley, filled with old trash cans and shadows that seemed to stretch with them. Jenna's mind raced. "The park, it's nearby," she suggested, hoping it would lead them to safety. "Fine," Sam agreed, determination shining in his eyes, but uncertainty still lingered, nipping at their heels. They navigated through the alley like racing shadows, the sound of their footsteps echoing on the wet pavement. The city loomed around them, still and cold, as if holding its breath. Every moment felt weighty, time stretching and distorting as they turned onto a deserted street. Jenna glanced back, half expecting to see someone chasing them. She breathed, "Who?" Sam shot back, but his tone lacked the sharpness. With a sudden rush of conflicting emotions, Jenna squeezed his hand tighter, pushing forward. "We can't stop." The distant glow of the park lights broke through the haze, promising refuge. As they reached the entrance, she stopped, taking a deep breath. The vastness of the park spread out before them, its darkness dotted with faint lights beckoning. Just as they stepped inside, her phone buzzed again. Sam urged, glancing over his shoulder, the tension palpable. With a deep inhale, Jenna answered, heart racing. "Listen quickly," the voice commanded, stark and urgent. "You're running out of time. The two of you need to reach the fountain." Jenna protested, her mind swirling. The line cut, leaving her in a blank uncertainty as reality clicked into place. Her heart raced as she faced Sam, who was watching her with confusion. "We need to go to the fountain," she told him, trying to swallow the fear lodged in her throat. "Why?" His voice rose, but she could see the flicker of fear and determination in his eyes. "Because it's our only option," she urged, feeling urgency grip her. As they moved deeper into the park, shadows shifted around them, hinting at dangers unseen. The air crackled, a low tension growing with each step they took toward the illuminated fountain ahead. The park felt alive, sounds whispering secrets through the rustling leaves. The fountain loomed closer, its water dancing in the glimmering light, but instead of comfort, uncertainty loomed with every step they took. Sam's voice trembled as they reached the fountain, the night surrounding them like a murky fog. "Then we fight," Jenna said, her voice steady, resolute. But before either of them could react, they were engulfed in shadows. A figure appeared from behind the fountain, stepping into the light, and Jenna's breath caught in her throat. The voice belonged to the one who'd been calling them, the one who had warned her all along. Sam demanded, stepping protectively in front of Jenna. "Enough questions." "Time is short," he said firmly, yet carried an air of authority. Sam snapped back, overrun by the fear of the unknown. The man stepped closer, and Jenna could see the intensity in his eyes, the sincerity in his tone cutting through the panic. Sam faltered, uncertainty flickering across his features. "I know they're coming for you," he said sharply. "They were tracking Sam. They know you're here together." The words hung like a cloud of electricity in the air. Jenna asked, her voice barely a whisper. Before he could answer, loud footsteps echoed from behind them, and the faint glint of shadows emerged from the dark. The man warned, eyes narrowing. Sam shouted, pulling Jenna back toward the park's path. Together they bolted, pumping their legs as fear propelled them forward. Jenna shouted, adrenaline pulsating through her body. The distant voices grew louder, chaos echoing behind them. Sam suggested, glancing uncertainly at the multiple paths branching off. Jenna countered, clinging to hope as they dashed toward a darker section of the park where the trees loomed tall, shielding them from view. But the shadows closed in and the echoes of boots were relentless. Jenna's heart pounded in her ears, fear mixing with determination, each second stretching on like an eternity. They needed to plan something. Suddenly Sam stopped, pulling her behind a large tree trunk, panting heavily. They could hear voices closing in, feet crunching twigs and leaves. "Stay quiet," she whispered, feeling the tension course through their bodies. She could barely hear her own thoughts over the sound of their racing hearts. Sam whispered, eyes wide. "No," Jenna replied, but doubt gnawed at her. The waiting felt endless. Just then her phone buzzed again. Sam snapped, his voice harsh. "I have to check," she murmured, fingers trembling as she pulled it out. Quickly she answered. "Listen carefully," the voice ordered. "You're hidden now. They think you're gone. The right moment." She asked frantically, "Stay patient. You can't make a sound. I'll be in touch," and the connection faded into silence. Sam pushed, worry creasing his forehead. "He said to wait for the moment," she replied, panic thrumming in her veins. They stayed there, tension hanging thick between them, the world around them a blur. All they could hear was the distant sound of voices, people calling, searching. Suddenly the voices grew quiet. That moment stretched on, the shadows merging into the darkness around them. Sam asked, barely breathing. Just then her phone buzzed once more, breaking the silence, and she felt her heart leap into her throat. The man's voice came through, sharp and clear. She said, her voice a whisper, pushing aside the panic. "Now you have to make your move," he instructed. "They're looking the other way. Move to the left path toward the gate." "Got it," she said, glancing at Sam. He urged, and they exchanged a quick nod, adrenaline kicking in as they took off through the underbrush. The path loomed ahead, filled with shadows but leading them to freedom. Every step felt precarious, each heartbeat echoing louder than the last. "Stay close," she hissed, glancing back at the figure now appearing at the edge of their vision. Together they dashed toward the gate, heartbeats crashing like thunder, feeling every ounce of their determination fuel their escape. They were so close. As they reached the gate, Jenna paused, scanning the area ahead. The distant lights of the street illuminated the world outside, but they felt a rush of doubt. Sam panted, anxiety surging. "Just a little longer," Jenna replied, scanning for signs of movement. Just then, a figure broke through the shadows, emerging from behind the trees, and Jenna's heart did a flip. And called, his voice familiar and commanding. They dashed forward, their adrenaline propelling them, but Sam hesitated. Jenna urged, already moving toward him. "Fine," he relented, his voice tense. As they reached the man, the first rays of dawn began to break, illuminating their path forward, a promise of hope through the chaos. "Get moving," he urged, looking back toward the sounds of footsteps behind them. With renewed determination, Jenna took Sam's hand, pulling him through the gate to the outside world. The night had felt endless, but now, in the light of dawn, it was a new beginning. They ran, hearts pounding, freedom swelling inside, while the shadows of their past slowly melted away behind them. They were not just surviving, they were reclaiming their lives, ready to face the future together, armed with the knowledge that they would stand strong against anything that threatened them. The sound of rain drummed against the cafe window, a steady rhythm that mirrored Jenna's anxious heartbeat. At a corner table, she stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, her eyes flicking to the door every few seconds. Where was Sam? Just when the clock reached 5, the familiar chime of the door echoed through the fading chatter and clinking dishes, and in walked Sam, drenched and frantic. He nearly shouted, rushing toward her, his eyes wide and frantic. The moment their gazes locked, Jenna felt a wave of relief wash over her, but it was quickly overshadowed by the anxiety in his expression. She asked, her pulse quickening. He shook his head, looking over his shoulder as if expecting someone to follow. "I don't know." That was all it took. Jenna's instincts kicked in. She leaned across the table, lowering her voice. "There's a back exit." He hesitated for a heartbeat, his uncertainty palpable. "We don't have time to waste." The urgency in her voice seemed to snap him out of it. Without another word, they stood up, and Jenna pointed toward the nondescript door at the back of the cafe. Just then her phone buzzed violently in her pocket, cutting through the tension like a knife. Her heart dropped. This was it. This was the moment that could change everything. Wait, Sam shot her a look that was equal parts panic and anger. With trembling fingers, she pulled out the phone and answered it. Jenna, it's me. The voice on the other end was calm yet urgent, sending chills down her spine. Yes, she replied, glancing at Sam. He was tapping his foot, a wild look in his eyes, clearly agitated. Stay where you are. What? She wanted to scream, but kept her voice low. Trust me. The line went dead. Sam pressed an edge of desperation in his tone. He told us to stay, she said, but her heart was sinking. Stay? Are you kidding me? Sam's voice was rising, panic evident. Jenna replied, her chest tightening. Taking a deep breath, she watched as Sam's face contorted with doubt. They weren't just running from shadows. They were caught in a web of uncertainty, threading their way through danger. As if on cue, the cafe door swung open again, revealing a tall figure cloaked in shadows. The newcomer stepped inside, dripping wet, their very presence sending a jolt of electricity through the room. Jenna's gut twisted. Sam hissed, pulling her behind a booth. They crouched low, their breaths shallow and lined with fear. Jenna could feel the weight of every second, each tick of the clock amplifying the tension. The figure was scanning the room, moving closer, and Jenna's heart was pounding so loudly she feared it might betray them. Jenna whispered, her voice trembling, but the question hung heavy in the air, unanswered. The figure paused and Jenna's mind raced. They could be anyone, a friend or a foe. Just then her phone buzzed in her hand again, shaking like a leaf in a storm. Sam urged, his voice tight with fear. With shaking hands, she pressed the button. Jenna, you need to listen closely. The voice was urgent, sharp, cutting through her panic. Don't move, they are already here. She stammered, glancing at Sam, who was wide-eyed. Just stay quiet and stay out of sight, he instructed, and then the line went dead. She turned to Sam, her heart racing. What? Sam stressed, glancing toward the door as his body tensed like a coiled spring. She said, her voice coming out more frantic than she intended. As if to confirm her fears, the stranger took another step closer, eyeing their booth. Sam asked, fear creeping into his voice. Jenna felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. We have to make a run for it, she whispered desperately. Sam's expression shifted from panic to resolve. On 3, Jenna whispered, counting down in her head. 1. But just then the figure seemed to hone in on their location, eyes narrowing suspiciously. Sam whispered urgently, his voice trembling. Jenna gasped and they bolted out from behind the booth, darting toward the back exit. The air felt charged, adrenaline coursing through their veins as they pushed through the door into the narrow alleyway. The cool night air greeted them like a long-lost friend, but also held its own sense of urgency and dread. Sam asked, his voice laced with anxiety as they stepped into the darkness. Jenna urged. The alley was a maze of shadows and the sound of their footsteps echoed like a warning. They emerged onto a desolate street, streetlights flickering like ominous eyes above them. Jenna's mind raced as she tried to navigate the path in the chaos. The park is close, Sam asked, glancing over his shoulder, brows knitted with worry. They won't if we keep moving, she said, her own voice filled with determination. They sprinted down the street, fear mingling with a wild sense of freedom. The park entrance loomed ahead, shadowy and inviting, but also filled with uncertainty. Sam panted, his breath coming in shallow gasps. I don't know, Jenna admitted, glancing around at the eerie stillness surrounding them. As they slipped into the park, Jenna felt the safety of the trees wrap around them. What had started as an ordinary day had spiraled into chaos, but she couldn't process the fear just yet. Her instincts to survive kicked in fiercely as they crept deeper into the shadows. Jenna looked over at Sam, whose expression echoed her concern. He whispered, "It isn't," she replied, though doubt clutched at her chest. Moments later, fatigue pushed down on Jenna as they found a thick cluster of bushes, providing a semblance of shelter. Their breaths came heavy and labored as they crouched down, hearts racing, and then without warning her phone buzzed again, breaking the silence. Jenna exclaimed, panic flooding her veins as she answered. "Jenna, you need to move." "They've spotted you," the voice crackled urgently. She gasped, her stomach twisting with dread. "Doesn't matter, head toward the fountain now," she protested, but the line cut off, leaving her more anxious than before. Sam asked, eyes wide with alarm, "Fountain now?" He shook his head, disbelief etched on his face. She insisted. Before he could respond, the distant shouts echoed through the trees. They were coming. Without hesitation, Jenna grabbed his hand. They sprinted toward the fountain, the sound of their footsteps the only thing cutting through the heaviness of the night. As they reached the fountain's edge, Jenna paused, scanning for any sign of the mysterious man. Sam asked, glancing nervously around. "He has to be," she murmured, anxiety pooling in her gut. Just then a figure stepped from behind a tree, emerging into the faint moonlight. It was him. He called, urgency lacing his voice. Jenna shouted, pulling Sam along as panic surged within her. They dashed toward the figure, the darkness closing in around them. But even as they ran, a question loomed in Jenna's mind. Could they trust him? The man instructed as they neared him, concern etched on his face. Sam probed, desperation coloring his tone. Without wasting another moment, the man led them away from the fountain into a shadowy path that opened up like a secret passage. As they maneuvered through the trees, Jenna's heart raced. Was this truly safe? The darkness felt alive, each rustle of the leaves heightening her anticipation. Finally, they paused, catching their breath near a secluded spot in the park hidden from view. The man turned toward them, the weight of seriousness hanging in the air. Jenna asked, clutching Sam's arm. "A group that doesn't care about collateral damage," Sam demanded, narrowing his eyes. "Look, I can explain later." Jenna's heart raced. They had trusted him this far. Could they keep going? She asked, voice steady for the first time that night. "Head toward the north end of the park." Sam asked, skepticism lacing his tone. "It won't be easy." There was a finality to his tone, a reminder that there was no turning back. As they slipped through the foliage, Jenna felt driven by raw determination. This was their chance to break free from the fear that had tethered them so tightly. But the sound of footsteps echoed behind them, a chilling reminder that they weren't alone. Sam hissed. The man shouted, adrenaline surging through them as they sprinted toward the darkened exit, branches snagging at their clothes and grass slipping beneath their feet. With each step, the world blurred, the weight of uncertainty heavy on their shoulders. They had come so far, risking everything for a fleeting chance at safety. Finally, they saw the edge of the park, the light from the street pouring in like a beacon of hope. Jenna pushed forward, heart pounding as they neared freedom. But before they could reach the exit, a shadow loomed, blocking their path nearly. A voice demanded. Panic surged through Jenna, instinct telling her to turn back, but it was too late. The man in front of them growled, eyes piercing through the darkness. "I'm not here to hurt you," the man who had guided them responded, raising his hands in surrender. But that only fueled Jenna's fear. She exclaimed, her voice shaking. The newcomer hissed, nerves electric in the air. Jenna's heart raced as she tried to assess the situation. She whispered to Sam, feeling the threat loom closer. "Stay back," Sam urged under his breath, just as their guide stepped forward. "Just listen, I don't care," the newcomer growled. "Please," Jenna pleaded, desperation flooding her voice as she tried to appeal to their humanity. But as the tension escalated, she felt the darkness closing in. All hope seemed to fade into uncertainty. Would this be their final moment? Then came a voice from behind. Jenna turned to see another figure emerging from the shadows, a commanding presence. The tension shifted, fear melting into confusion. "Who is this? Let them leave. We don't want this to escalate," the newcomer insisted, his voice steady and authoritative as he faced the group ahead. Sam shouted, confusion evident in his voice. "Just to help," the stranger said as he stepped closer, hands raised to show he meant no harm. "I know what you've got mixed up in." The threat paused, eyes shifting between them, uncertainty sparking in the air. "Take them, but keep your eyes open." "They may be more trouble than they're worth," the man said. In that instant, Jenna felt the weight of 1,000 fears lift as the tension shifted, the threat retreating into the darkness. "Let's go," the guiding man urged, urgency flickering in his gaze. Without hesitation, Jenna and Sam took off toward the exit, hearts racing as they crossed into the light. They slid through the gap, emerging to the street with fresh air pouring in like clarity. They didn't stop running, adrenaline fueling their escape. Behind them, the night's chaos faded into silence, uncertainty dissipating in the glow of dawn. Jenna turned to Sam, breathless but alive, their path now seeming brighter. They had faced the shadows that night, and while their journey wasn't over, this moment was just the beginning of reclaiming their lives together. As the city awakened, they felt a shared sense of resolve, an unbreakable bond crafted from fear and survival. They weren't just running from their past, they were stepping boldly into their future, ready to face whatever came next. The cafe door swung open with a gust of wind, letting in the chill of the evening and an air of unease. Jenna's eyes shot toward the entrance as her heart raced. It was supposed to be just another Thursday, a simple coffee date with Sam. Now, with nerves crackling like static in the air, she scanned the crowd looking for him. Moments passed, and when she spotted him, her breath caught in her throat. Sam appeared in the doorway, drenched, disheveled, and visibly shaken. Rainwater dripped from his hair, and his wide eyes were filled with panic. He shouted, cutting through the low murmur of cafe chatter. She called back, waving her arms as if to pull him toward her. Relief washed over her, but the look on his face quickly replaced that feeling with dread. Jenna asked as Sam rushed to her side, his breath coming in quick bursts. "No, but I felt them. I just know they're close," he replied, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting someone to burst through the door behind him. Jenna's stomach twisted into knots. They had both been on edge for weeks, but tonight felt different. The air thickened with an unspoken threat, mounting their anxiety. "We need to leave, now," she urged, lowering her voice so only he could hear. Without hesitation, Jenna pointed toward the back exit, a plain door hidden behind a row of shelves. They had been here before, and she knew it led to an alleyway that could bring them some distance from danger. Sam asked, doubt creeping into his tone. "We won't know unless we try," she insisted, steeling her resolve. Just as they were about to move, her phone buzzed violently in her pocket. The sound sent a jolt through her, and her instincts screamed at her to answer it. "Wait," she whispered, pulling it out. Sam hissed, looking around nervously. Her fingers trembled as she looked at the caller ID. It was him, the one who had been guiding them through this mess. She pressed the green button, barely able to contain her racing heart. His voice came through, calm yet urgent. "Yes, he's right here," she replied, quickly glancing at Sam, whose anxiety was palpable. "Stay where you are, your safety depends on it," he instructed, his voice firm. Jenna asked, panic creeping into her voice. "Just trust me." The line went dead. Sam asked, urgency dripping from his words. Jenna swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the unknown settle on her. Sam echoed incredulously, his expression shifting from panic to frustration. "That doesn't make any sense." Jenna could feel her own instincts battling against her logic. But she started, but just then the cafe door swung open again, and a tall figure stepped inside, water pouring from their clothes, scanning the room with an intensity that froze Jenna in place. Sam urged, pulling her behind a nearby booth. They crouched low, hearts pounding, breaths shallow. Jenna locked eyes with Sam, the fear palpable between them. Gear moved closer, and she could feel her pulse quicken, each beat resonating louder in the thick silence. She whispered, fear twisting her stomach into tight knots. Before Sam could respond, her phone buzzed again, jolting them both. He asked, panic threaded in his voice. "I have to take this," Jenna insisted, trembling as she fished the phone from her pocket. Sam whispered harshly, but she pressed the green button. "Jenna, do not move," the familiar voice ordered, cold and commanding. "They're coming." Who? Jenna's heartbeat felt like a drum in her ears, each pulse echoing her rising fear. "You just need to wait, I'll send you instructions. Do not leave until I call back," he instructed, emphasis on the finality. Jenna needed answers, but the line went silent. She turned to Sam, her heart racing. "They're coming, we have to," but her words were cut short as the figure had spotted them. Their head tilted in their direction, eyes narrowing as they stepped closer with purpose. Sam whispered, panic rising. Jenna urged, adrenaline pushing her forward, but just as they prepared to bolt, the figure's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. Jenna's stomach twisted and she felt Sam stiffen beside her. This was it, the moment of reckoning, but Jenna had to act. Without thinking, she grabbed Sam's hand and they dashed toward the back exit. Pushing through the door, the chill of the night air hit them hard, but they pressed on, hearts racing as fear propelled them into the alleyway. Sam panted, glancing back to see if they were being followed. "We need to get to safety," Jenna replied, trying to keep her voice calm, but uncertainty gnawed at her. "The park is just ahead." Sam asked, still looking anxious. "Yes," she insisted, moving forward as the alley opened into the street. With adrenaline pumping through their veins, they sprinted toward the park, shadows flickering around them. The streetlights provided a flickering sense of security, but deep down, Jenna felt the eyes of the unknown lurking just beyond their reach. Once inside the park, the trees loomed over them, dark and foreboding. Sam asked, looking around, panic creeping back into his voice. "Let's find a spot to hide," Jenna suggested, scanning for any potential refuge. The world around them felt surreal, the quiet of the night punctuated by the thrum of their heartbeats. They spotted a grove of bushes and quickly ducked behind them, breathing heavily. Jenna's mind raced with thoughts of what was happening, all the while feeling the weight of their vulnerability settle over them. Sam whispered, desperation evident in his tone. "I hope so," Jenna replied, glancing at her phone again. "But we can't stop moving." Moments passed like hours, the silence stretching around them. Then, without warning, her phone buzzed again. Sam asked, heart racing. "I don't know," Jenna murmured, answering it quickly. The voice sounded more urgent now, tinged with a sense of danger. She asked, feeling hope flicker within her. "Head towards the public restroom by the playground. I'll meet you there." She asked, fear creeping back. "Just trust me." The call ended abruptly, leaving Jenna breathless. Sam asked, his voice trembling slightly. "We have to go," Jenna replied, her voice steadying as determination settled in her chest. "Okay, but we need to be quick," he said, urgency urging him forward as they slipped through the bushes and headed toward the playground. They moved cautiously, peering around corners, but as they reached the restroom, Jenna's heart began to race. This was it, the moment that could change everything. Sam wondered out loud, glancing around nervously. "I don't know," Jenna admitted, the weight of their circumstances feeling heavier by the second. Just then there was a rustle in the bushes nearby, and they both froze, hearts pounding. Jenna's stomach knotted, hands clammy as she tried to assess the noise, but the figure stepping out was not what they expected. It was the man from before, the one who had been guiding them. Sam snapped, confusion and fear bubbling over once more. "Here. You're safe for now, but we need to be quick," the man replied, urgency lacing his every word. Jenna demanded, her heart racing. "Because there's no time, they may still be looking for you," he said, glancing around as if expecting someone to jump out at them. With a deep breath, looking back toward the darkness that loomed, Jenna could feel her instincts playing tug-of-war with her head. "Okay," she said finally. They moved quickly through the winding paths of the park, aware of the shadows lurking around them but determined to make it through. Jenna's heart raced as they passed through another grove, the darkness wrapping around them like a shroud. Sam whispered, clearly still on edge, "Trust me, we have to get to the other side of the park," the guide replied. Jenna pressed, her mind flooded with questions. "Yes, but not for long, just keep moving," he instructed, urgency evident in his voice. Each step echoed louder in the stillness of the night, adrenaline urging them forward. Jenna's thoughts whirled. What was happening? Who were they running from? She couldn't afford to think about that now. All she could do was focus on the moment. As they neared the edge, the sounds of rustling leaves pierced through the air, causing Jenna to stop cold. She whispered, looking back toward the darkness. Their guide urged, and they picked up speed again, fear propelling them forward. Suddenly, headlights broke through the trees, illuminating their path. Cars were coming into the park. Fear paralyzed Jenna, and Sam grabbed her arm tightly. He shouted, "Quick," the man called, veering them into the thick underbrush away from the road. They dashed into the darkness, where shadows danced around them, the sound of car doors slamming echoing through the night. Jenna held onto her breath, trying to silence the chaos in her mind. She asked, her voice shaky. "For now," the man replied, glancing back toward the road, urgency written on his face. Jenna's heart raced as they crept deeper into the thicket, veiled from view, but anxiety still hung around them like smoke. She asked. "We wait," the man said firmly. Minutes felt like hours as they settled into the underbrush, the sounds of the park blending into a surreal symphony. Anxiety bubbled inside her, and she glanced at Sam, who seemed equally on edge. Then the sound of footsteps drifted closer, eased by their heightened senses. Jenna froze, holding her breath. Silent seconds passed, and then more footsteps chimed in a scuffle followed by muffled voices that were all too familiar. One of the voices called out, and they felt the shadows closing in. She whispered to Sam, feeling a wave of panic rise. "We can't stay here," he urged, desperation lining his words. "Just breathe," she said, gripping his hand tightly. As the voices drew nearer, it felt like time slowed, the heartbeat of night echoing in her ears. The footsteps faded in the distance, drifting like smoke and leaving behind only silence. After a long moment, the man leaned closer. He asked. "Not yet," Jenna replied, glancing back toward the path. Finally, when the tension became unbearable, the unknown man gave a nod. "Let's go," he instructed. They moved as quietly as they could through the underbrush, adrenaline surging with each step. Jenna's heart felt like a drum, pounding a reminder of how close they had come to danger. As they reached the edge of the park, they could see the street beyond a road to freedom. The night felt alive around them, filled with possibility. Jenna whispered, urging them onward, but just as they stepped toward the light of the street, her phone rang again, startling her. Sam urged, fighting against her instincts. She pressed the button. "Jenna," the voice was frantic, sending chills coursing through her veins. "We're at the park exit," she replied, feeling the anxiety seep in, wondering what kind of danger was awaiting them. "Don't go yet." Panic surged in her chest, the reality crashing down. She demanded, heart racing. "Stay where you are, I'll come to you," the voice said. She argued, adrenaline roaring through her body. The voice screamed, and then the call cut off. Jenna shouted, panic taking over. Sam warned, motioning urgently toward the path. With an instinct fueled by fear, Jenna moved forward, breaking free from the safety of the shadows and racing toward the light at the edge of the street. She urged Sam, and they bolted together into the moonlight, chance upon chance swirling around them. But uncertainty loomed behind them, the footsteps echoing and following. They needed to escape, they had to. As they reached the road, headlights broke through the darkness. The car rounded the corner, and Jenna's heart pounded harder. This could be it, their lifeline or their end. Sam shouted, and they dove into the nearby bushes just as the car slowed down. A voice called from inside, echoing in the uncertainty of the night, chilling Jenna to her core. She squeezed her eyes shut, praying they wouldn't be spotted, the world around her becoming a blur of shadows and restless fear. Moments later, the car sped away, leaving them in silence, hearts racing as they caught their breath. Sam whispered, his eyes wide with disbelief. "For now," Jenna replied, her voice trembling as she looked back toward the empty road, only a sensation of uncertainty settling in her gut. They stayed hidden for what felt like an eternity, the night stretching out longer than they could process. Finally, when they felt the danger had passed, they slipped out from the bushes. Sam asked, glancing over his shoulder, anxiety still evident on his face. "We'll be okay," Jenna assured him, though they both knew this was only the beginning of their battle. "But we can't stop moving," he asked, still visibly shaken. "Anywhere but here," she said, adrenaline pushing her forward. As they pushed onward into the night, the city lights twinkling in the distance, Jenna could feel the promise of freedom ahead. Together, they would overcome whatever dangers lay in front of them. They had come too far to turn back now, and as the dawn approached, a new day broke over the horizon. They were not just survivors, they were warriors armed with resilience and hope, determined to reclaim their lives from the shadows. No matter what came next, they would face it together. The bell above the cafe door chimed softly, its familiar sound drowned out by the patter of pouring rain outside. Jenna sat at her usual spot by the window, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her coffee cup, the steam rising twisted in the air like her spiraling thoughts. She glanced at her watch for the third time in 5 minutes. Sam was late. Her stomach churned with a mix of apprehension and anticipation. They had decided to meet here, away from their usual haunts, hoping this familiar yet distant place would shield them from the chaos of their lives. But as the minutes ticked by, a cold sense of dread settled in her chest. Just when she considered calling him, the door swung open again, hard enough to rattle the overhead lights. In walked Sam, drenched, his hair plastered to his forehead, and a frantic look in his eyes that sent a surge of fear through her. He scanned the room, and when their eyes met, an unspoken understanding passed between them. He shouted, making his way through the scattered tables, a sense of urgency propelling him forward. She replied, waving him down. He slid into the seat across from her, breathless and clearly shaken. She asked, her voice low, almost a whisper. He shook his head, but Jenna could see the tension etched on his face. "I felt like I was being watched the whole way here," he replied, glancing over his shoulder as if someone might be lurking in the shadows. "We can't stay here long," Jenna urged, anxiety tightening her grip on her coffee cup. Sam nodded, his gaze still darting toward the door. "They won't think to look for us in this place," Jenna said, her voice steady despite the panic swirling inside her. "Let's go through the back exit." As she pointed toward an unmarked door at the back of the cafe, a sudden buzz from her pocket made her jump. Her heart raced as she pulled out her phone, the screen lighting up with an unknown number. "Wait," she said, instinctively answering it. The voice on the other end was familiar yet filled with urgency. She replied, but her heart sank as she glanced at Sam. His eyes flickered with uncertainty. The voice instructed, its tone leaving no room for argument. Sam interjected, a mixture of mistrust and panic bubbling beneath the surface. "I know, just stay put." The line went dead. Sam pressed, urgency creeping back into his voice. "He told us to stay," Jenna replied, but the weight of her words settled heavily in the air. Sam's frustration bubbled over. "Are you kidding me? Maybe he knows something we don't," Jenna countered, but doubt gnawed at her. The tension between them thickened, knotting like a tightrope stretching across a chasm of uncertainty. Before she could say anything else, the cafe door opened with a creak. A figure stepped inside, dripping wet, their clothes clinging to them like a heavy shroud. Jenna's heart dropped. She could feel the tension in the room shift as the figure's gaze swept across the cafe, locking onto their booth. Sam hissed, his eyes widening. They both ducked behind the table, heartbeats thundering in their chests. Jenna's mind raced. Who was this person? Were they friend or foe? As they crouched there, she could hear a voice, the soft but urgent murmur of conversation nearby. "Stay calm," she whispered to Sam. Minutes passed like hours, the silence stretching around them, but Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. Suddenly her phone vibrated again, the sound cutting through the tension like a siren in the night. Sam urged, a note of panic creeping into his voice. With shaking hands, she pressed the answer button. "Jenna, you need to move." The voice was sharp, direct, yet laced with something else, fear. She asked, her heart racing. "Through the back door." "What?" Jenna's voice trembled as she glanced at Sam, whose anxiety was palpable. "Just go." The voice cut out abruptly. Jenna said, urgency flooding her system. Sam protested, still crouched low. She insisted, fear igniting a fierce determination. "Okay." He replied, and with one last look at the figure still looming at the entrance, they both shot up from behind the booth. Jenna led the way through the narrow space between tables, her heart pounding as she pushed open the back door, stepping into the cool air of the alleyway outside. She called to Sam, who followed close behind. Once outside, they sprinted down the alley, the sounds of the cafe fading behind them. The rain pelted down, adding an urgency to their escape as it soaked through Jenna's clothes. Her mind raced, weaving through uncertainty as she glanced back to make sure they weren't being followed. Sam asked, breathless, as they reached the end of the alley. "I know a place nearby," Jenna replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "The park." They turned down a dim street, the glow of streetlights flickering like ghosts in the night. Shadows gathered around them, and every step felt like a confrontation with the darkness. Jenna could feel the tension coiling in her stomach, the fear of being caught compounding their urgency. As they approached the park, the trees loomed like sentinels guarding a hidden sanctuary. "We need to find somewhere to hide," she said, scanning the area for a potential refuge. Sam pointed toward a cluster of bushes unusually dense, providing at least some shield from the outside world. They quickly ducked behind the thick foliage, hearts racing as they tried to catch their breath. Sam whispered, glancing nervously around. "I hope so," Jenna replied, trying to calm the frantic beating of her heart. Moments ticked by an agonizing silence, but suddenly her phone rang again, gut-wrenching anxiety slicing through her. Jenna exclaimed, pulling it out hurriedly. Sam urged, eyes wide with fear. Taking a deep breath, she swiped to answer. "Listen closely," the voice said, urgency thrumming through every syllable. "You need to rendezvous at the fountain and stay hidden." Jenna demanded, fear edging into her voice. "Trust me, just go, I'll see you soon," the caller insisted before cutting off. Sam questioned, concern etching deeper lines into his brow. "It's our only shot," Jenna said, determination hardening her voice. "Okay," Sam replied, though hesitation lingered in his expression. They slipped from the bushes, moving quickly through the darkened paths of the park. The thrill of fear mixed with adrenaline, propelling them forward as they made their way toward the fountain that sparkled faintly in the distance. Sam asked, looking over his shoulder nervously. "If we stay quiet, we should be fine," Jenna replied, trying to reassure him even as doubts clouded her own mind. They reached the fountain, its water glinting under the dim light, but it felt vulnerable. The shadows around them seemed to pulse with unknown dangers. Sam asked, his eyes darting around. "I don't know," Jenna admitted, urgency flaring inside her. Just then, the distant sound of footsteps echoed through the night. Jenna's breath hitched in her throat, fear surging as she turned to Sam. "They're coming." They ducked behind the fountain, hearts pounding in rhythm with the approaching footsteps. Jenna tried to calm her breathing, each second stretching painfully longer. Whispered Sam, his voice laced with panic. "I don't know," Jenna replied, wishing she had the answers. As the footsteps drew closer, she felt her stomach drop. The realization hit raw and bitter. They could be discovered at any moment. Then a figure emerged from the darkness, stepping into the light. Jenna squinted, her heart racing as she recognized him, the mysterious caller. "Quick," he exclaimed, beckoning them forward, urgency painted across his face. They didn't hesitate. Jenna grabbed Sam's hand, and together they dashed toward him, the fear that had been gnawing at them transforming into focused determination. As they moved deeper into the park, Jenna felt the shadows closing in behind them, but she wouldn't let fear dictate her actions any longer. She breathed, glancing back at the darkness, anxiety still coiling in her gut. Their guide urged, leading them further into the underbrush, where shadows turned labyrinthine. Every whisper of the wind felt like a warning, urging them on. Finally, they reached a small clearing, the trees opening up to reveal a narrow path. "This should lead us to safety," he said, glancing back nervously. Sam questioned while drawing Jenna closer. "There's no time to explain," their guide replied. Jenna felt the tension in the air thicken and the uncertainty pressed against her chest. She had to believe that he meant well. "Okay," she said, catching Sam's eye. "We've come this far." As they moved down the path, Jenna felt a surge of determination boost her steps. But that determination wavered when a sudden noise erupted behind them, the sound of shouting voices and footsteps slicing through the night. Their guide barked, pushing them forward, driving urgency through Jenna's veins. They ran hard, hearts pounding as their lungs screamed for air. The path twisted and turned like a dreamscape, shadows looming around them, drawing closer. Sam gasped, turning his head slightly to catch a glimpse of the shadows. "I don't know," Jenna urged, desperation fueling her. They could hear the voices drawing closer, the promise of danger weaving through the night like a viscous thread. As they stumbled out onto a street illuminated by the flickering lights of nearby buildings, Jenna felt a surge of hope. She shouted, determined to reach the safety of the street ahead. But just as they reached the end of the path, headlights suddenly pierced the darkness, and the smell of exhaust filled the air. Their guide yelled, pulling them back just as a car passed by, barely missing them. The vehicle screeched to a halt, and panic flooded Jenna. Sam asked, desperation clawing at his words. "Not yet," their guide replied, looking around cautiously. But as they pressed on, the shadows seemed to thicken, the danger palpable. Jenna could feel it in the air, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. She said, her voice rising as adrenaline surged through her body. "Now," their guide directed, urging them forward. They sprinted out into the streets, weaving between parked cars. The noise of their footsteps echoed through the night. Jenna felt the weight of uncertainty push down on her, each step a challenge against the fear curling inside her. But then Sam's shout pierced through her thoughts. Jenna turned, panic swelling as she saw a group of figures silhouetted in the distance. Their voices carried over the night, anger mingling with determination. Their guide shouted, pushing them toward a nearby alley. They slipped inside just as the figures reached the street, voices rising in urgency. The shadows began to close in again, and Jenna thought for a moment that the walls were closing around her. Where would they go? Where could they hide? Their guide said as they pressed themselves against the wall, hearts racing as they waited. Sam whispered, eyes wide with fear. "I'm not sure," Jenna replied, taking a deep breath, trying to steady the chaos inside. Time stretched on, and the uncertainty began to tighten around them once more. She felt the pressure of their situation bearing down, each second feeling like an eternity as they listened to the footsteps echoing closer. Their guide urged just as the figures passed by, their anger echoing off the walls. They stepped out from the alley, adrenaline coursing through every fiber of Jenna's being. He shouted as they ran deeper into the night, the scent of freedom lingering just ahead. As they moved through the streets, Jenna could feel the weight of hope and fear intertwining in a wild dance. They were close, yet each unfamiliar turn felt like a precipice, teetering between safety and danger. With every step, she felt stronger, and the bond between her and Sam tightened. They were not alone in this fight. Together they would navigate the unknown until they found their way out. As dawn approached, the city slowly began to awaken. Jenna allowed herself to breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that every decision they had made thus far had led them to this moment. With the light breaking over the horizon, they stepped into a new day, hearts still racing but spirits buoyed by resilience. And as they moved forward together, they took the first steps toward building a new reality, one where shadows could not reach them, where fear would give way to hope at last. The cafe door creaked as it swung open, a gust of wind slinking in along with the soft sounds of rain falling outside. Jenna sat at a corner table, her fingers nervously tapping against the surface, sending an erratic rhythm echoing through the quiet space. She glanced at the clock above the counter. Sam was late. Fear crept into her mind like ivy growing up an old wall. Then she saw him. As soon as the door opened again, her heart dropped, not from relief, but dread. It wasn't Sam who walked in. It was a tall figure, drenched and intimidating. He scanned the room with calculated precision, his eyes betraying nothing. Jenna's spine tingled. Something was very wrong. Just as panic settled in, the door swung open a third time, and in rushed Sam, hair wet and clothes clinging to him. His urgency sliced through the tension. She shouted, waving him down. When Sam reached her, breathless and wild-eyed, she could feel the connection they shared, the silent understanding that something dark was lingering just beyond the walls of the cafe. She whispered, leaning in. He shook his head, but his expression suggested that he felt someone's eyes on him the entire time. "I think I lost them," he replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "But we can't stay here." Jenna nodded, fear pooling in her chest like water in a sinking ship. She pointed towards a door tucked behind a shelf, barely noticeable but familiar to her. Sam tilted his head, uncertainty etched across his face. Before Jenna could respond, her phone buzzed violently in her pocket, jolting her. "I have to take this," she said, fishing it out before Sam could protest. "Jenna." He hissed, anxiety saturating his tone, but she couldn't ignore the dread twisting in her gut as she answered. "Jenna, it's me." The voice on the other end was urgent, terse. She began, stealing a glance at Sam, who was now nervously tapping his foot. "Listen closely," he interrupted, his voice a whip crack. "You need to stay where you are, don't go out the back." Panic prickled her skin. "I don't have time to explain, just trust me." "I'll call back with instructions," he said, the line cutting off before Jenna could protest. Sam asked, anxiety vibrating in his voice. "He told us to stay put," she replied, dread filling the silence between them. "We can't stay here." Sam's fear morphed into urgency. "I know, but he seemed to know something," Jenna pressed, her heart hammering. While she could feel Sam's eyes darting toward the door, she quietly weighed their options. Just then the door creaked open again, and the tall figure from before stepped back inside, scanning the cafe with an intensity that made Jenna's stomach drop. Sam hissed, pulling her behind their table in a flash. They crouched low, the air heavy with uncertainty. Jenna's mind raced. Who was this man? What did he want? She could feel Sam's heart pounding next to her, erratic like her own. She whispered, her voice trembling as they both peered around the edge of the table to watch the figure. "Just wait," Sam whispered back, but the tension thickening around them felt unbearable. Then, without warning, her phone buzzed again, cutting through the thick atmosphere like a knife. Sam urged, his voice low and frantic. With shaky fingers, Jenna answered. She asked. He sounded frantic. "They're here." She demanded, glancing at Sam, who was now fidgeting with the collar of his shirt. "Don't ask questions." The urgency in his voice was electric. "What?" he shouted, and the call cut off. Jenna asked, her heart racing as she glanced at Sam. His eyes were wide, torn between the instinct to flee and the instinct to hide. "We have to run." She nodded, adrenaline kicking in. Sam said, standing up abruptly. But before she could finish, they were both darting out from behind the table, pushing through the back door and into the alleyway. Cool air washed over them, a welcome respite, but the danger felt very real. Sam asked, his breath coming out in gasps as they reached the end of the alley. Jenna urged. She quickly led the way down the dark passage, her heart pounding in rhythm with their footfalls. The shadows loomed around them like lingering specters, watching their every move. They burst onto a dimly lit street, the scent of fresh rain mingling with exhaust fumes. Jenna glanced around, scanning the area. "The park is just ahead," she said, pointing toward the distant tree line, her instincts directing her. Sam's voice trembled with uncertainty. "I hope not," she replied, but her heart raced with every step. They hurried toward the park, the urgency of their situation weighing them down like a heavy cloak. Once inside the park, dark trees loomed overhead, shadows stretching like fingers reaching for them. "We need to find a place to hide," Jenna said, scanning the area for a refuge. Sam pointed toward a dense cluster of bushes. They rushed toward it, ducking behind the foliage, hearts racing. The rustling leaves seemed to echo their breaths, thickening the air with tension. Jenna whispered, stealing a glance at Sam. "I don't know, I just feel like something's about to happen," he admitted, his voice shaky. "Just breathe," she insisted, clasping his hand tightly. Moments passed, stretching into eternity as they crouched in the bushes, the darkness of the park engulfing them. It felt surreal, the calm pulling tightly around them. Then her phone vibrated again and her heart plummeted. She muttered, glancing at Sam, whose expression mirrored her own dread. He urged, a mixture of anxiety and hope flooding his voice. With trembling fingers, she swiped the screen. She demanded, "Get ready to move," the voice instructed. "Head toward the fountain." She questioned, concern gnawing at her. "Trust me," he urged, the line cutting off abruptly. "We have to go to the fountain," she told Sam, her heart racing again, but now with renewed adrenaline. "Fine, but I'm not going in blind," he replied, determination boring into his features. Running from the bushes, they darted toward the fountain, each step filled with a mix of urgency and fear. Jenna could hear the distant sound of footsteps behind them, a reminder that danger was lurking just around the corner. Sam whispered, his eyes wide with fear. "I don't know, but we have to trust him," Jenna insisted, pushing through the brush. When they reached the fountain, the cold water shimmered under the moonlight, but Jenna felt anything but calm. She murmured, urgency pressing down on her. I don't know, Sam replied, glancing back warily. Then the echo of footsteps grew louder on the path. Jenna's heart raced, their time was running out. She hissed, ducking behind the stone edge of the fountain. As they crouched low, Jenna could feel the weight of panic settle in her chest. Sam whispered, breathless and scared. Then we run, together, she whispered back, squeezing his hand tightly. As the footsteps approached, Jenna held her breath. In that suffocating silence, she could sense the presence hovering around them just beyond reach. Then a figure stepped into view, and it wasn't the voice they had been waiting for. Instead, it was the same ominous figure from before, his silhouette stark against the moonlight. He called, a twisted smirk playing on his lips. Sam whispered frantically, retreating further behind the fountain, and just as Jenna was about to speak, her phone buzzed once more. She hesitated for a moment but then answered quickly. Get ready, I'm almost there, the voice said flatly, urgency pulsing through the phone. When I arrive, we make our move, she stammered, glancing across. The figure was still looming closer, drawing nearer with each taunting step. The voice urged, and then the line went dead. Sam said, adrenaline coursing through him as he prepared to move. Just then the figure snapped in their direction, his gaze piercing through the darkness. He shouted, taking a step closer. Sam urged, adrenaline surging as they sprinted away from the fountain, hearts pounding as they ran through the park's winding paths. Jenna shouted, fear surging with every step. The night seemed to close in around them, shadows stretching like claws grasping for them. He replied, the urgency sharp in his voice. They dodged through trees, leaping over roots and branches until they reached a small grove. Breathless, they ducked behind a thick trunk, their hearts racing as they tried to catch their breath. Jenna gasped, scanning the area for any signs of movement. I hope so, but we can't stay here forever, Sam replied, glancing nervously around. Just as Jenna opened her mouth to speak, another sound echoed from the darkness. Footsteps were back, and this time they sounded closer. Panic flared within her, tearing at her sanity. Sam whispered, his voice barely a breath. She replied, frustration mixing with her fear. Suddenly, the figure emerged from the shadows, his eyes narrowing in their direction. He taunted, stepping closer, danger dripping from every syllable. Sam shouted, and they both darted deeper into the grove, adrenaline propelling them forward. Jenna urged, gripping Sam's hand tightly as they raced further into the trees. Finally, they reached another bend in the path and ducked behind a bush, hearts racing as they pressed against the damp earth. The figure called out into the darkness. In that brief moment of silence, Jenna caught her breath, tension fizzing in the air around them. I don't think he's going to let us go, Sam whispered. Jenna insisted, trying to muster any confidence she had left. Just then her phone vibrated in her pocket, startling her. She gasped, pulling it out. Answer it, Sam urged, panic flaring. She opened the call, glancing at Sam. He insisted, voice trembling with urgency. Taking a deep breath, she answered, holding her breath. The voice barked. There's a path that's about to open, but you need to be ready. My arrival is imminent. What do you mean? Jenna pressed, dancing on the knife's edge of hope and dread. You'll see. The line cut off once again, leaving Jenna breathless. Sam asked frantically. He told me a path would open, she said, heart pounding as she tried to decipher the message. Sam's voice rose, fear about to erupt. She whispered back, trying to keep the panic at bay. He shot back, his words piercing through the air like arrows, but before she could respond, a light flickered through the trees, drawing their attention away. Jenna exclaimed, pointing to two silhouettes emerging from the shadows. Sam gasped, clutching Jenna's arm tightly. She held her breath as she watched, unsure whether to flee or wait, panic swirling like a storm inside her. But then, as if time had slowed, she recognized one of the figures. It was him, the one who had been giving them instructions. He commanded, and in an instant they were on their feet, racing toward the light that beckoned them. They dashed through the trees, turning on instinct and adrenaline. The man urged, leading them through a narrow path that opened like a secret escape. As they ran, Jenna felt a rush of freedom surging through her veins. They were close now, closer than they'd ever been. But just as they reached a clearing, she felt a shift in the air, the sudden feeling of something shifting behind them. The man said, urgency in his voice, pushing them forward. Jenna and Sam glanced back, an unmistakable shadow gleaming in the distance, gaining on them. Jenna shouted, her lungs burning, heart pounding like thunder as they sprinted toward what felt like freedom. Finally, they broke into the light, the outside world sprawling before them. In that moment, all the fear and uncertainty faded behind. They both paused for a moment, catching their breaths before they stepped into the light, closing the distance between danger and safety. Just then, the sound of footsteps faded into the night. They had made it, they were free. Together, they had conquered the night, ready to face whatever lay ahead. In that fleeting moment, standing in the new dawn, Jenna knew they were not just survivors, they were warriors, and they would rise together again. The cafe door swung open with a jingle that seemed to echo through Jenna's racing thoughts. The smell of coffee hung thick in the air, but it did little to calm her nerves. She tapped her fingers on the table, anxiously glancing at the clock. Sam was late, too late. Just as she was about to pull out her phone to text him, the door opened again and in rushed a figure, drenched from head to toe. Sam, but something was off. He looked frantic, eyes darting around the cafe like a cornered animal. Jenna's heart raced as he made his way toward her. He gasped, breathless, as he slid into the seat across from her. She asked, trying to keep her voice low, her stomach sinking. "I think they're on to me," he said, looking over his shoulder as if expecting someone to burst through the door. She pressed, nerves prickling at the back of her mind. He shook his head, but Jenna could see the uncertainty in his eyes. "Then let's go," she urged, her heart pounding. Her gaze darted to the back exit, a plain door he had never even noticed before. Sam questioned, his brow furrowing. "There's no time to think," she insisted, a sharp edge to her voice that made Sam nod in agreement. Just as they stood up, Jenna felt her phone buzz violently in her pocket. Her breath caught. It was an unknown number. "Jenna," Sam implored, eyes wide. She hesitated, the vibrations thrumming in her hand. He urged, taking a deep breath. She pulled it out and answered. "Jenna," the voice was grave, sending a chill down her spine. "Yes," she replied, looking at him nervously. "Stay where you are." "What?" Jenna whispered, her stomach twisting. "Trust me, they're watching." The line cut off abruptly. Jenna looked at Sam, fear creeping into her chest. "Are you kidding?" Sam's voice grew frantic as he glanced toward the door. "Then we should be ready," she shot back, her mind racing. As if on cue, the cafe door creaked open again. Jenna felt her heart leap into her throat. The figure in the doorway was tall and drenched, their face obscured by shadows. Something about their posture sent a wave of dread coursing through her. Sam whispered, his voice tight. They hurried to slip behind a booth, crouched low like prey waiting for the hunter. Jenna's heart thudded in her ears as she stole a glance around the booth's edge. Sam squeezed her hand, fear radiating from him. "Stay calm," she whispered, hating the trembling in her own voice. Minutes felt like hours as the figure scanned the cafe, attention landing on their general direction. "We don't have much time," Sam murmured, trying to steady his breaths. Jenna could feel the electricity in the air, something building that hinted at either escape or disaster. Then her phone buzzed again, shocking them both into attention. "It's him," she whispered urgently. "Yes," Sam replied, eyes darting to the door again. She answered the call, her heart racing. "Don't do anything rash," the voice warned. "They're close," she pressed, her mind frantically searching for answers. "I don't have time to explain, just trust me." The call ended abruptly again, leaving her breathless. Sam urged, "They're coming," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. He insisted, looking ready to bolt. Jenna felt torn. Sam replied, desperation lacing his voice. Silence hung thick in the air, filled only by the distant murmur of conversations in the cafe. Jenna felt time stretching, the seconds measured in heartbeats between them. Fear pushed her toward the back exit, but logic pulled her back. Finally, the figure turned away from the entrance, and Jenna seized the moment. She yelled, pushing herself and Sam out from behind the booth. They dashed toward the back door, but before they could reach it, something caught Jenna's eye movement from the shadows. She turned just in time to see two more figures entering the cafe, glancing around with predatory eyes. She shouted, adrenaline surging in her veins. They burst through the door just as the figures spotted them. Outside, they collapsed into the narrow alleyway, gasping for air. Rain dripped down from the eaves above, and the cold air hit her like a wave. Jenna turned to Sam, whose panic mirrored her own. He asked, his voice trembling. She urged, and they took off through the alley, unsure of where they were going, but knowing that staying still meant certain doom. They emerged onto a street, glancing around for any signs of safety. The faint lights cast eerie shadows around them, heightening the sense of danger. "The park's nearby," Jenna said, pointing toward the flickering green of trees in the distance. Sam hesitated, looking over his shoulder. She said, fear boiling in her chest, propelling her. They sprinted toward the park, the sounds of the city melding into a low hum as they focused only on their escape. The moment they entered the park, the trees swallowed them in darkness. The cool air felt thick, charged with uncertainty. They moved cautiously through the shadows, searching for somewhere to hide. Sam pointed to a dense thicket. They rushed into the underbrush and dropped down, pressing their backs against the cool earth. Sam whispered, looking wary. "I don't know," Jenna replied, her heart racing as she scanned their surroundings. Minutes felt like hours as they crouched in silence, every rustle of a branch sending jolts of fear through Jenna. She felt adrenaline coursing, her limbs tense with anxiety. Sam sounded terrified, each breath shaky. "Then we fight," Jenna said, surprised by her own assertiveness. Just then her phone buzzed again, the sound cutting through the tension. Jenna's heart raced, she fumbled to answer it, her fingers trembling. "Prepare to run toward the fountain," the voice said, sharper this time. "I'll be there soon," Jenna asked, glancing nervously at Sam. The voice insisted and the connection cut off. Sam exclaimed, his voice rising. What was happening? The world felt like a cold spring ready to snap. Jenna stood up, adrenaline kicking in. "Get ready." Sam's eyes widened. "Yes," she commanded, urgency flooding her veins as she took off, pulling Sam along. They raced through the dark, shadows wrapping around them. Jenna wasn't even sure if she was going in the right direction. She was fueled by instinct and sheer will. As they approached the fountain, its water shimmered dimly in the shadows, but Jenna could feel the heaviness in the air, a sense of something looming. Sam panted, looking around nervously. "I don't know," Jenna admitted, her heart racing as they scanned for any sign of him. The fountain felt distant, and she could only hope he would arrive in time. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed behind them, followed by raised voices. Jenna's heart dropped as fear surged within her. She shouted, adrenaline surging through her body like wildfire. Quick, Sam yelled, urging her onward. They sprinted toward the fountain, but in that moment, a shadow flickered across the path. Jenna's breath caught in her throat as she saw the figure from the cafe, now running toward them. He shouted, his voice echoing like a clap of thunder. Terrified, Jenna turned to Sam. He urged, pulling her firmly as they raced toward the fountain, desperation propelling them. They reached the fountain just as a loud crash reverberated behind them, the crushing sound of chaos unraveling. The silhouette of the man loomed closer, the earlier confidence cracked now into an expression of dark determination. Jenna hissed and they ducked behind the stone edge of the fountain, hearts pounding in unison. Sam gasped, his breath hitching. They're coming for us, she whispered, her voice trembling with fear but determination flaring up, driving her down deeper into the thick underbrush. Then her phone buzzed once more, startling her. She scrambled, fear clawing at her stomach. Sam urged, darting glances back toward the chaos. She snapped, gripping the phone tightly. Run, now. They know you're there, the voice warned, fierce urgency punctuating every syllable. She demanded, fear pulsing in her veins. The voice urged, panic rising before the line went dead. Jenna shouted, frustration boiling inside her. Sam pushed, urgency brimming as he pointed toward the park's edge. She exclaimed, wrestling with the fear gripping her heart. Then what? His fear launched, tension tightening like a rubber band ready to snap. Fine, Jenna said finally, determination hardening her resolve. They took off from behind the fountain, charging through the dense underbrush toward the park's edge, hearts racing. Suddenly, they spotted movement in the corner of their eyes, and instinct kicked in. Sam shouted, leading them through the shadows, every step tinged with urgency. But as they reached a narrow passage out of the park, they stumbled upon an unexpected sight. More figures gathered near the entrance, their expressions hostile and predatory. One of them shouted, eyes narrowing as they locked onto Jenna and Sam. Jenna's heart sank, they were surrounded. Another voice called out, sending shivers down Jenna's spine. Sam asked, panic infecting his voice as the figures drew closer. Jenna whispered, the weight of the moment pressing down on her, but a spark ignited within her. They weren't going down without a fight, not now. And just as she was about to react, the ground beneath them shook with thunderous footsteps, a flash of light illuminating the darkness and revealing something entirely unexpected, a car speeding toward them, doors flung open. A familiar voice shouted from within the vehicle, relief mingling with desperation. In that moment, Jenna and Sam exchanged a panicked glance. They knew they had to decide quickly. Sam shouted, grabbing her hand as they both dashed toward the open doors. Just as they dove inside, Jenna looked back to see the figures charging after them, shadows merging with the chaos. Drive, she yelled as the car peeled away, leaving behind the chaos and darkness, but uncertainty still loomed. And as they sped away, Jenna couldn't shake the sinking feeling that this was just the beginning of something far worse than they could imagine. The figures remained behind them, shrouded in mystery. A storm was brewing, and they were right in the eye of it.